a night at the opera. So remember when I splurged on opera tickets after that lucrative curse removal gig last month? Well, the night finally arrived, and there I was, dressed in my fanciest black dress, the one with only one small burn mark from a backfired fireball spell, staring at my opera tickets on the kitchen counter. 2 tickets. Because apparently even sorceresses fall victim to social pressure and can't just buy 1 seat without the box office lady giving that pitying, "Going alone?" look. With 3 hours until curtain and 0 prospects for a date, enchanted dating apps are the worst. I made an executive decision. If I couldn't conjure a date in the traditional sense, well, literally conjure one. I flipped to my Sophisticated Entities chapter, bypassing the Party Demons section. Lesson learned. The cultured companion spell seemed perfect, designed to create a temporary, elegant escort for social functions. I gathered the components: opera glasses, a bow tie, a champagne cork, and the dust from an old vinyl record. With precise incantation and only minimal dramatic hand-waving, I completed the ritual. The smoke cleared to reveal, oh no. Standing in my living room was 7 feet of impeccably dressed monster. Tuxedo perfect. Posture excellent. Skin texture, somewhere between Swamp Thing and moldy cheese. Face? Let's just say multiple eyes and tentacles aren't traditionally considered opera chic. "Good evening, madam," it said in a surprisingly refined British accent. "I understand we're attending Madama Butterfly this evening." "You're cultured," I managed. "Indeed. I possess knowledge of 147 operas and appropriate conversation for intermission." I checked the time. No chance for a resummon. Just keep the tentacles inside the tuxedo. Naturally, I'm familiar with human social norms. Surprisingly, we were a hit. Everyone assumed he was in costume for an avant-garde theater group. He explained librettos to me, knew when to applaud, and even made the soprano blush with his insightful praise afterward. My classy monster might become a regular +1. Next time, though, maybe fewer tentacles, more arms. Sharing popcorn was complicated, a matter of time and shirts. There's a special kind of frustration that comes with your coffee freezing midair when you've barely had your first sip. That was the 3rd time this week, and I was starting to get annoyed. Let me back up a bit. My name's Rebecca, Sorceress Extraordinaire, at least according to my business cards, and I've recently found myself with an unusual problem. His name is Ethan, and he can freeze time. I first noticed it last Tuesday at Beans and Books, my favorite cafe/bookstore, where I go to research obscure magical texts while pretending to be a normal person who just enjoys overpriced lattes. One moment I was reaching for my caramel macchiato, and the next everything just stopped. The barista was frozen mid-eye roll. The steam from the espresso machine hung suspended in the air, and even the annoyingly catchy pop song playing overhead cut to silence. Everything except for the tall, dark-haired guy leaning against the pickup counter, who was definitely looking at me, directly at me, while somehow still moving. "You can still move," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. "That's new." "Of course I can move," I snapped back, though honestly I was just as confused as he seemed to be. "What did you do to everyone else?" "Froze time," he said with a casual shrug, as if he'd merely commented on the weather. "But you're not frozen. Interesting." That's how I met Ethan, the time freezer. Turns out being a sorceress gives me some immunity to temporal manipulation. Not complete immunity, as things around me still freeze, but enough that I remain conscious during these little timeouts, as he calls them. Since then, he's been showing up everywhere. Everywhere. The grocery store, my favorite bookshop, even outside my apartment building. Always with that same impressed look on his face, always stopping time just to talk to me. It was flattering at first. I mean, using supernatural powers just to get a girl's attention is kind of a grand gesture, but it quickly veered into inconvenient territory. Like today. I was running late for a meeting with a client. Curse toaster, don't ask. Had just picked up my desperately needed coffee and was half jogging down the street when everything froze again. My coffee hovered mid-splash, about to create a stain on my favorite blouse that would never have happened if time had continued its normal flow. "Hey, Rebecca," came Ethan's voice from behind me. He strolled around to face me, looking unfairly put together in a blue button-down shirt that matched his eyes, his annoyingly pretty eyes. "Fancy meeting you here." "Ethan," I said with a sigh, carefully taking my suspended coffee cup and setting it upright in the frozen air where it stayed put. At least his time freezing had some perks. "You know, most guys just ask for a phone number." He had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "Sorry about that. I like talking to you without other people around." "So your solution is to stop the entire space-time continuum?" When you put it that way, it does sound a bit much. He ran his hand through his hair in that way that was definitely practiced, but still somehow endearing. I think you're fascinating. And beautiful." I felt my cheeks warm slightly. "Look, I'm not made of stone." He was attractive, in that slightly too aware of it way that usually spelled trouble. Plus, supernatural abilities aside from my own always intrigued the sorceress in me. "While I appreciate the compliment," I said, trying to sound professional, "you can't just keep freezing time whenever you want to chat me up. It's disrupting my schedule, and frankly, it's a bit stalkerish." "Fair point," he conceded. "What if I promise to only freeze time when it's an emergency?" "Define emergency. Like, if I see you about to get hit by a bus, or if you're about to spill coffee on yourself." He gestured toward my suspended beverage with a grin. "That's not an emergency. That's just you being..." I stopped mid-sentence, a thought suddenly occurring to me. Actually, hold that thought. This was my chance. If I could just cast a quick spell to neutralize his abilities, I could solve this problem right now. I always kept a small emergency spell pouch in my jacket pocket. A sorceress is always prepared. And I quickly pulled out what I needed. A pinch of sand from a broken hourglass, a sliver of mirror, and a whispered incantation. "Tempest fluid, non-stat," I murmured, focusing my energy on Ethan. "Nullify this power. Restore the natural law." I felt the magic leave my fingertips, saw the familiar shimmer of a successful spell, and then watched in horror as Ethan's button-down shirt simply vanished, leaving him standing there in just his jeans. Oh no. That's not what was supposed to happen, I stammered, trying desperately to keep my eyes on his face and not on his surprisingly well-defined chest and abs. Who knew time freezing was such a good workout? Ethan looked down at himself, then back at me with a slow smile spreading across his face. "If you wanted me to take my shirt off, you could have just asked." I could feel my face burning now. "That's not... I was trying to stop you from freezing time," I protested. The spell must have gotten confused. "Confused?" he repeated, clearly not believing me. "Is that what they're calling it these days?" "This is mortifying," I muttered, rummaging through my spell pouch again. "I don't suppose you have a spare shirt in your frozen time pocket dimension?" "Unfortunately not," he said, making absolutely no attempt to cover himself. "Though I'm not particularly bothered." "I can see that," I said dryly, then immediately regretted my word choice. Never mind. Let me fix this." I quickly cast a clothing manifestation spell, which thankfully worked as intended, wrapping him in a simple white t-shirt. Not as nice as his original shirt, but at least I could think straight again. "Thanks," he said, looking almost disappointed, though I was enjoying the direction this was going. The direction was going to be me hexing you into next week if you didn't stop freezing time every time you wanted to chat, I said, trying to regain my composure. How about a compromise? He suggested. No more surprise time freezes. Instead, I'll use my actual words, like a normal person, and just ask you out for coffee. One where both of us are moving through time at the same rate. I considered this. On one hand, he was essentially a magical stalker. On the other hand, he had taken my accidental shirtless spell with good humor, and I was genuinely curious about his abilities. One coffee, I agreed cautiously. And if you freeze time even once without a legitimate emergency, and no, me potentially saying no to a second date is not an emergency, I will turn all your shirts into live butterflies. I know that spell by heart. He grinned. Deal. Should we shake on it? Let's just get time moving again before my client thinks I've stood her up. With a snap of his fingers, the world resumed. My coffee continued its interrupted journey through the air, but I was ready this time, catching it before it could spill. Impressive reflexes, Ethan commented. Sorceress, I reminded him with a small smile. We're always prepared. Well, except for accidentally de-shirting attractive time manipulators. But some lessons you just have to learn on the job. 6 of one, half a dozen of handsome. I've had spell mishaps before. Remember the grocery golem incident? But this one really takes the cake. Let me tell you about the time I accidentally turned my coffee shop crush into a small army. It all started at Mystic Brews, where I get my morning caffeine fix. For 3 weeks straight, I'd been admiring the new barista, Jamal, according to his name tag. Tall, with shoulders that filled out his coffee shop apron in ways that should be illegal, skin the color of rich mahogany, and a smile that made me forget my usual order. Every single time. Let me guess, he'd say, eyes twinkling. Cinnamon latte with almond milk and an extra shot for Rebecca. The way he said my name, lingering on each syllable like he enjoyed the taste of it, made my knees embarrassingly weak. And I'd just stand there nodding like an idiot, as if he'd performed incredible magic by remembering my order, when I'm literally a sorceress who once accidentally turned my landlord into a potted fern. That particular morning, I decided to wear my confidence outfit. A black off-the-shoulder t-shirt that showed just enough collarbone to be interesting, a tight miniskirt that made my legs look a mile long, and black pantyhose because it was still technically spring. When I walked in, Jamal actually stopped, mid-pour, nearly overfilling a customer's cup. Good morning, Rebecca, he said, his eyes making a quick but appreciative journey from my face to my legs and back. You look... wow. Thanks, I managed, suddenly very interested in the pastry display. Just, felt like dressing up today. You should feel like that more often, he replied with a grin that made me forget what I was ordering for the 4th time that week. My best friend Zoe, tired of hearing me wax poetic about barista Jamal, finally said, Just ask him out already. I can't just ask him out, I protested. What would I even say? How about, would you like to get coffee sometime? Oh, wait. That won't work because he works at a coffee shop. Zoe has no patience for my romantic ineptitude. Besides, the way he looks at you when you wear that mini skirt, trust me, he's interested. Instead of following her sensible advice, I did what any socially awkward sorceress would do. I decided to cast an attraction spell. Nothing manipulative, just a tiny enchantment to give me a confidence boost, make me a bit more noticeable, a magical wing woman, if you will. I waited until the night of the new moon, optimal for new beginnings, and set up my ritual space. Candles, check. Moonstone for intuition, check. Photo of Jamal I'd sneakily taken while pretending to adjust my camera settings, slightly stalkerish, but check. The spell required me to focus on the essence of the desired while chanting the incantation. Simple enough, except that as I was channeling my energy, My familiar, a green-eyed cat named Merlin with zero respect for magical boundaries, knocked over a vial of multiplication powder directly onto Jamal's photo. I should have stopped immediately. Rule number 1 of spellcasting: if contaminated, abort mission. But I was in the zone, and frankly, I'd already paid for the nice cheeses for my post-spell celebration. So I continued. The next morning, I headed to Mystic Brews in my lucky outfit. Same off-the-shoulder shirt, same miniskirt that had earned such a delightful reaction before. As I pushed open the door, I immediately noticed something was off. Jamal was at the register as usual, but he was also at the espresso machine and wiping down tables and restocking pastries and checking inventory in the back and holding the door open for a customer. 6 identical Jamals, all working in perfect harmony. I froze in the doorway, my brain short-circuiting at the sight. 1 Jamal was enough to make me forget basic vocabulary. 6 was a cognitive catastrophe. "Morning, Rebecca," they called out in unison, each one somehow making my name sound like a caress. Oh God, they even knew my name in stereo. How? My extensive magical education had not prepared me for this moment. The nearest Jamal, let's call him Jamal Prime, approached with a concerned smile. "Are you okay? You look a little pale." His eyes traveled appreciatively over my outfit. "Though I have to say, Rebecca, that skirt is doing amazing things for you." "Fine. I'm fine," I squeaked, my voice reaching a pitch only familiars could hear. Just surprised to see so many of you. Jamal Prime looked confused. So many. That's when I realized. They didn't know. Each Jamal thought he was the only Jamal, somehow blind to his doppelgangers working literally feet away. The customers seemed equally oblivious, calmly ordering their coffees as if half a dozen identical men weren't running the shop. I needed to fix this immediately. But first, coffee. "Cinnamon latte, Rebecca?" Jamal Prime asked with that smile, somehow turning my name into something that sounded both innocent and suggestive. "Yes, please," I managed, trying not to panic. As he turned to make my drink, another Jamal 2, Electric Boogaloo, slid over. "Hey, Rebecca," he said, leaning on the counter in a way that highlighted his arms. "I've been meaning to ask you something." "Oh?" My heart skipped. "Would you like to go out sometime? Maybe dinner this weekend? I can't stop thinking about you, Rebecca." The way he said my name made me feel like I was melting into my black pantyhose. Before I could respond, Jamal 3 appeared beside me. I was just about to ask her the same thing. Rebecca deserves a proper night out. "No way. I've been working up the courage all week," said Jamal 4, emerging from behind the pastry case. "Rebecca, that outfit is killing me today. Please say yes to dinner." Sweet magical mishaps. Not only had I cloned Jamal, but apparently my attraction spell had worked on all of them. I need to use the restroom," I blurted, fleeing toward the back of the shop. Once safely locked inside, I pulled out my emergency spell kit, never leave home without it, and frantically searched for a reversal charm. Finding none, I texted Zoe. "Magical emergency, Mystic Brews, now." 20 minutes later, after explaining my predicament to an unsympathetic Zoe, only you could turn a simple crush into a magical felony, we hatched a plan. I returned to the main area, where all 6 Jamals were now arguing over who would get to ask me out first, each one somehow managing to work my name into every other sentence. The real Jamal had to be one of them, but which one? "Attention, Jamals," I announced, instantly regretting my word choice. "I need to check something. Could you all follow me outside for a moment?" Miraculously, they agreed. Once in the alley behind the shop, I quickly cast a truth-revealing spell that would identify magical constructs versus the original. 5 of the Jamals glowed slightly blue, clones. 1 remained normal, the original. Unfortunately, my spell revealed something else. The clones were unstable, already beginning to fade around the edges. By tomorrow, they'd be gone naturally. Crisis averted. Except, which one had asked me out? I couldn't remember if it was original Jamal or clone Jamal number 4 who had first extended the dinner invitation. There was only one solution. So, about dinner this weekend, I said to original Jamal, I'd love to go. Magic recognizes magic. I spent 3 hours getting ready for my date with Jamal. 3 hours. I, Rebecca, who once banished a minor demon while wearing pajamas and bedhead, actually cared what I looked like for once. This is ridiculous, I muttered to myself, rifling through my closet for the 5th time. My familiar, Merlin, watched from his perch atop my dresser with his judgy eyes. I finally settled on my signature style, what I like to call sorceress chic, but what my mother calls a phase that's lasted 15 years. A pleated black mini skirt, sheer black pantyhose, platform combat boots that added a dangerous 3 inches to my height, and an off-the-shoulder top with intricate silver embroidery that doubled as a low-key protection sigil. I finished the look with a choker bearing a small moonstone pendant and deep burgundy lipstick. Hey, just because I can cast spells doesn't mean I can't also look good doing it. Jamal had suggested we meet at Arcane Grounds, not the coffee shop where he worked, but a little-known speakeasy hidden beneath an old bookstore. I'd heard rumors about the place, but had never managed to find it. The fact that he knew about it already raised my estimation of him. I arrived at the bookstore at precisely 8 p.m., wondering if I'd need to knock on a secret wall or say a password. Instead, a small black cat, eerily similar to Merlin but with both eyes closed, appeared from between the bookshelves and meowed expectantly. I'm supposed to follow you, aren't I? I whispered. The cat blinked slowly in response. It led me to a back corner where a shelf filled with ancient-looking tomes stood. The cat pawed at a particular volume, Temporal Anomalies in Magical Practice, a book I'd actually been searching for. And when I pulled it, the entire bookshelf slid silently aside. Clever. Very clever. I descended a narrow staircase illuminated by floating orbs of soft purple light to find a cozy underground space with dark wood tables, plush velvet booths, and bottles of mysteriously colored liquids lining the walls. The air hummed with energy that made my fingertips tingle. Ambient magic, but controlled, intentional. And there was Jamal, rising from a corner booth as I entered, his smile just as disarming as it had been across the coffee shop counter. He wore a deep blue button-down that complemented his rich skin tone perfectly, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms, adorned with what I now recognized as protective sigils inked into his skin. Not tattoos, magical markings. Rebecca, he said, my name rolling off his tongue like honey. You found the place. Your feline guide was helpful, I replied, sliding into the booth across from him. Nice touch. Not mine, actually. She belongs to the establishment. He took in my outfit with an appreciative glance. You look incredible. I love your style. Bold, unapologetic. It suits you. Thanks, I said, feeling a rush of pleasure at his approval. Some people don't get the whole gothic vibe, but it feels right to me. Magic isn't all white robes and flower crowns. Magic is shadow as much as light. He agreed, signaling to a waitress who appeared with 2 glasses of something that shifted colors like an opal caught in sunlight. I ordered us the house specialty. It's called Moon Shadow. Reveals something different to each drinker. I took a cautious sip and tasted wild berries, dark chocolate, and something ancient and unfamiliar that made my magic stir beneath my skin. Interesting, I murmured. There's a hint of something I can't place. Starlight, he said without hesitation. Captured during a meteor shower and distilled. Very rare ingredient. I nearly choked on my drink. That's impossible. You can't bottle starlight. His eyes, which I'd thought were brown, suddenly seemed to contain flecks of gold. Many things are only impossible until someone shows you otherwise. That's when I felt it. The steady, ancient pulse of magic emanating from him. Far more controlled and potent than anything I'd ever encountered. This wasn't the magic of a dabbler or even a practiced sorceress like myself. This was old power. You're not just a barista, are you? I asked carefully. His laugh was warm and genuine. No more than you're just a coffee shop regular. I recognized your power the first day you walked in. It's why I remembered your order. Magic recognizes magic. Over the next hour, as we shared small plates of impossibly delicious food, cloudberries that actually floated slightly above the plate, cheese that changed flavors with each bite. Jamal, or rather, the man I knew as Jamal, revealed himself piece by piece. He was a sorcerer, yes, but not just any sorcerer. He had lived for centuries, gathering knowledge, perfecting his craft, occasionally taking a new identity when staying in one place too long raised suspicions. Coffee shops were his current fancy, places to observe humanity, to find others with the spark. My true name, he said, leaning close enough that I could feel his breath against my ear, is Al-Khalid. But most who know my nature simply call me the Everlasting. Something about the name resonated in my bones, like a tuning fork had been struck against my soul. That's quite a title. One I've earned through many lifetimes, he said with a slight smile. But I prefer Jamal in everyday situations. Less dramatic. So, the Everlasting makes my morning coffee, I said, trying to process this revelation. And decided to ask me out because you're different, Rebecca. Your power has a unique signature. Raw, untrained in some ways, but immensely potent. And because his fingers brushed against mine across the table, sending a jolt of electricity up my arm. I find everything about you fascinating. Before I could respond, he flicked his wrist, and the air between us rippled. A small sphere of what looked like liquid darkness formed above our table, swirling with pinpricks of light. What is that? I whispered, entranced. A fragment of the void between stars. Watch. He guided my hand toward it, and as my fingertips brushed the sphere's surface, it responded to my touch. The lights within rearranging themselves into constellations I'd never seen. Space manipulation, I breathed. That's impossible. The laws of magic clearly state, laws are meant to be rewritten by those who truly understand them, he said, his eyes never leaving mine. This is elementary once you grasp the fundamental nature of reality as merely suggestion rather than rule. The sphere dissipated into sparkling dust that vanished before touching the table. I stared at him, my mind racing with possibilities. Show me more, I said. Over dessert, a confection that tasted like your happiest memory, he demonstrated magic that defied everything I'd been taught. He aged a drop of wine into perfectly matured vinegar with a touch, then reversed the process. He showed me how to hear the thoughts of plants, how to feel the emotional residue left in objects, how to split my consciousness to exist in 2 moments simultaneously. Each demonstration was accompanied by the brush of his hand against mine, his arm around my shoulders, as he guided my movements, his lips near my ear as he whispered incantations. The combination of new magic and his proximity was intoxicating. Why show me all this? I asked, finally, as he walked me home through streets that seemed more vivid, more alive than they had hours before. Because you have the potential to wield this power yourself, he said. stopping beneath a streetlight that illuminated his features in a way that made him look otherworldly. And because I've been alone in my knowledge for a very long time. He stepped closer, one hand coming to rest at my waist, the other gently tilting my chin up. I'm offering to teach you, Rebecca, to show you magic beyond your wildest imaginings. And what do you get out of this arrangement? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady as his thumb traced my lower lip. The pleasure of your company, he said simply. And perhaps more if that's something you'd want as well. His kiss, when it came, tasted of starlight and possibilities. Gentle at first, then deepening as I responded, my hands finding their way to the back of his neck. I felt my magic rising to meet his, intertwining in a way that made the streetlight above us flicker and spark. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless and certain of two things. One, that Jamal, the everlasting, could show me realms of magic I'd never dreamed possible, and two, that I wanted to explore them all with him. So, he said, his voice slightly rougher than before, will you be my apprentice, Rebecca the Sorceress? I smiled, already imagining the power we could wield together, the secrets of the universe unfolding before us. I thought you'd never ask.